Aging, without a doubt, is a gift. It gives us the opportunity to appreciate all of life's experiences and to savor every last second. However, it's also a reminder that nothing lasts forever. Hi, I'm Paul Holstein, and I'm going to be reading to you the story of the Coughing Man on this episode of Poltergeist Frights. I've worked in this retirement home for over 20 years. I've taken care of everyone between decorated war veterans and dementia patients. It was always the usual routine of guiding visitors to their loved ones, giving our residents their medication, and making sure they were comfortable in their last few years. I always had a sense of guilt and despair when one of our little family eventually leaves us, but that's unfortunately part of the job. We always welcome new members, and I do get to meet some interesting characters. However, there was one patient that piqued my interest, an elderly man that was registered in our facility a little over a month ago. When he was introduced to us, he seemed distant, which wasn't unusual for some of our guests. However, what was unusual was what has been occurring throughout his stay. When he came to stay with us, he had problems with a cough, so we were provided with medication to make it easier on him. The only side effect is that it makes him drowsy, but he's still anxious whenever we try to give it to him and resists to take it. When he does eventually decide to take the medication, he always asks that he's alone in the room and the door locked. It was an unusual request, but it was part of our job to ensure that all our residents are comfortable. We do the same for him whenever it's lights out, which he also requested. When the lights are turned off and I do my nightly duties before going home, I could swear that there was a shadow of the old man staring out the door window, but I just played it off as a trick of the moonlight. One night, however, I was filing the latest records of our residents when I heard a weak wheezing coming from the old man's room. I took the keys from the door along with his medication and made my way towards the room. I put the pills in my pocket, unlocked the door, and entered the room of the old man. He was having a coughing fit in his sleep. His wheezing was weak, but it was causing his body to twitch. I took the pills and prepared to sit him up so that he could take it more easily. However, the moment I reached for him, his body was moving violently. His coughing was getting stronger and louder. His head was practically thrashing itself into the head, as if something was trying to get out. I ran to a phone, desperately dialing 911, switching my attention between the ringing and the room holding a man who seemed to be fighting for his life. All of a sudden, however, the room was quiet. No coughing or wheezing. Just the sound of crickets chirping a melody in the night outside. I slowly went inside the room, expecting to see a limp man who met his end. But what I saw was even more terrifying. The old man, his eyes still closed, was sitting up, a wrinkled hand pointing in the corner of the room. The next day, despite the events of last night, was just a typical day of my daily duties of checking in with the other residents and tidying their rooms. I just shrugged last night off as some trick of the moonlight or the stress of the job finally getting to me. My theories seemed to be confirmed because the old man seems to be normal now, along with the fact that I woke up a little more groggy than usual, but the work still had to get done. My last check-in of the day was with him as I entered the room, looking for any dust that could irritate his cough. I looked at a little shelf decorated with picture frames that came with his stuff upon his arrival. I never bothered to look at first, but for some reason, one picture got my attention. It was of a young man, looked to be about in his 20s, with a groomed black beard and slick back hair of the same color. He looked like a younger version of the man. After finishing my search for any lingering filth, I took the picture frame and brought it over to the old man. I asked if this was his grandson, but instead of shaking or nodding his head, he just looked at it. After his trance was broken, he looked at me. The sadness of missing him that I expected was instead an expression of fear. He raised his hand up to mine, to what seemed to be what little strength he had, trying to say something to me. What I heard from him was, "I'm sorry." And that gave me an overwhelming feeling of unease. What was it that he was sorry about? Did he do something? Or did the picture of that young man bring up some undesired reminder of past trauma? I gently removed my hand from his weak grip. However, when I looked down at them, I realized that my hands are almost as wrinkly and bony as the old man's. I ran out of the room, going towards the bathroom to splash water on my face. But when I reached for the door, my hands were back to normal. At that point, I was waiting for my shift to finally be over, having no doubt in my mind that I was letting last night get to me more than I thought. As nightfall eventually came, I was just typing away at the computer and filing today's records, just trying to waste time, when I started to hear a familiar sound. The old man was coughing in his sleep once again. I was hesitant to give him the medication after last time, but I knew that it was still my job to make him as comfortable as possible, scared or not. I took the usual medication into my pocket and was about to reach for the door. However, before I could get the key to the lock, the door started to creak and slowly open on its own. I tried convincing myself that I probably forgot to lock it until my eyes laid on the old man. He was on his bed, completely still and lifeless. Before I had a chance to think of the possibility that he passed on, I noticed that the sound of wheezing hasn't ceased. I got into the room, searching for the owner of the cough, but as I looked around, the only things in the room were me, the old man, and the phantom cough. I decided to check on him to make sure he was still alive, making my way to the foot of his bed. I gently shook the bed, hoping to wake him up and relieve my fears, and kept on shaking, hoping to God that he was still alive, until I felt a burning sensation on my shoulder. It was like someone on fire was grabbing me, so I turned around to see who or what had a hold on me. I jolted back against the wall when I saw the invader. Its eyes were purely white with no pupils. It had ghastly green skin with parts of its flesh hanging off the bone, dripping a purple substance. The sound coming out of it was a strong, disgusting hack. I tried to run out to the door for my escape, but it slammed shut and it wouldn't budge. The thing was stalking me, limping slowly toward me, a grin escaped where his lips should be, its teeth rotten, black saliva flowing out of them. Right as my back got as close to the wall as much as it possibly could, the old man jolted up, completely energized somehow and full of fear. That thing looked right at him, and I thought it was going to go after him. Out of instinct, I ran over to protect him, but I knew there was possibly nothing I could do to stop the creature. When I got over there, the old man grabbed me for dear life out of desperation. As the entity limped closer to me, wheezing and hacking stronger than ever now, the old man was yelling in my ear, repeating, "Help me!" When the creature was merely inches away, I got the frightened man behind me and attempted to push it away from him. When I did so, the burning sensation came back, along with the wrinkles from earlier. I tried to ignore the pain and kept pushing, but the thing took me by the throat and launched me on the bed, knocking my resident off. As soon as I was tossed on it, the creature crawled over to me. His face was close enough for the vile black spit to drop on me. With great strength, he took a hold of my face, his hacking more violent with each passing second. I felt my energy being drained. I can feel the wrinkles spreading all over my skin. I tried to cry out, but the only sound that I could make was a weak wheeze. The creature got closer and closer to my face, its hand grabbing me by my jaw and forced my mouth open. It unhinged my jaw, suddenly crawling into my mouth. The burning sensation can now be felt across my entire body. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't hear. I saw a young-looking hand grab the side of the bed, and what I saw was both incredible and terrifying. It was the young man from the pictures, but he looked almost as scared and confused as I was. When he saw me, he started shaking me. His mouth was moving as he had a look of desperation on his handsome face. It looked like his mouth was making the words, "Let her go!" Suddenly, the monster exited my body and took him by the chest and launched him out of the room as the door seemed to open and close on its own. The man banged on the door to get it open to no avail. When he stopped hitting the door, he looked at me. This time, it was a look of sadness when mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," and left. And ladies and gentlemen, that was The Coughing Man. I want to thank all of you for listening. And stay tuned for tomorrow for the season finale of these audio versions of these stories, as our final one will be The Maestro. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm your host, Paul Holstein, and this has been Poltergeist Frights.